It's time for a cup of coffee with Will and Chris at Slumberland Furniture. From Slumberland Furniture in Osage Beach, here are your hosts, William Holtz and Chris Schneider.
And for the new year, it's time for another cup of coffee from Slumberland at the lake. And it's your two goofy hosts. I'm Wild Will.
I'm Uncle Chris, and I'm the real goofy one, right?
I think we both are. So we got a great show for you. It's number 101. To celebrate the new Sunrise Beach American Legion commander after 16 years at sea. We'll tell you that pretty cool story.
Yeah.
Also, story of rescue over the weekend. There was a deer rescued from the ice. So some local politics. Lake Ozark filing deadline has come and gone, and might be surprised. Former mayor throws his name back into the cap to run against Mayor Newberry. Also, over the winter storm, we saw some freezing temperatures. We saw a lot of lost power, like we told you last week, but actually some houses and condos were flooding. We'll show you some video courtesy of our friends at Lake Expo. And of course, this week's hometown hero, but what everyone's talking about right now in this week is the tragedy that took place in Monday night's football game. 24-year-old Damar Hamlin of the Buffalo Bills suffers a terrible blunt trauma to his chest. The injury led to cardiac arrest. And so we'll tell you about that and a whole lot more on the other side of the break. But first, our man Daryl Cunningham from Slumberland at the lake.
Hey everyone, Daryl Cunningham with Slumberland Furniture at the Lake. We're in the middle of our inventory reduction sale where you can save a whole lot of money. We're standing in front of a leather, power reclining sectional that's $1,700 off. We have Stearns & Foster mattresses, up to $1,200 off. Great deals all over the store. Come check them out. Save tons of money. Slumberland Furniture, where we're bringing happy home.
Yeah, and as much as Chris, we want to talk about a lot of these local stories and want to talk about scores and standings. There's a moment where really all of that seems pretty irrelevant. You saw that on full display last night as 24-year-old Damar Hamlin, second-year safety for the Buffalo Bills, in the first quarter, collision with T. Higgins. I don't want to show it. I don't want to see it again. I've seen it so many times. And at first, Chris, what looked to be pretty innocent of a hit, got to his feet, and then as soon as he collapsed straight back, I knew that something serious had taken place.
Yeah, and the way everybody responded around him, I mean, players were like in shock, and coaches were running around. Then you had the emergency, EMS folks running out there and stuff, all of which we didn't really get to see live on TV. But him taking the hit and then getting up and then falling back down was stunning to watch that, to see what happened there. So yeah, it's all crazy. I think this is all new territory for pro sports, for the NFL, dealing with something like this on the field. And at this point, while we're recording that, we don't know how it's going to turn out.
No.
We don't know if he's going to regain consciousness and be okay. We don't know if he's not going to be okay. So it's kind of hard to, to deal with how you go on from here, not knowing what that is. But it reminds me a lot, I'm an old guy, so back like in the 80s or 90s, there was a college basketball player, Hank Gathers, that died on the basketball court during a game, had a heart issue, and it was being broadcast, televised, so they had, the whole television of him. He just hit a basket, I think it was a dunk, and he was running back down the floor, and all of a sudden he had this heart issue and he collapsed and died on the floor. Reminds me a lot of that, and just the shock and the tears and all of that comes with that.
Yeah, I've never seen anything quite like this. And as a Bills fan, a diehard Bills fan, back I think it was 2004 or 5 that the Kevin Everett injury. Do you remember that? Special teams play, a spinal cord injury, thought he'd never walk again. I remember that was at Ralph Wilson Stadium in Buffalo, and the ambulance. That was the first time I'd ever seen an ambulance on the field. And they took him out, and Kevin Everett was unable to give the signal that he was okay. And I'll never forget, he was just a young kid. He was a special teams player, not really known, by Buffalo Bills Mafia or Bills Nation and the NFL. But what that did to everyone, and not just the Bills organization. And then a year later, he walked out onto the stage at the ESPYs to receive the Arthur Ashe Award. And I'll never forget that. And so that had a happy ending. You just hope at this point, because Chris, I'd never seen players shed such raw emotion. Grown men that are considered to be the meanest, baddest, toughest competitors on the face of the planet are out there sobbing. And so when I saw that, it told me that we couldn't see at home. They saw something that had them shaken. And the report is that he went into cardiac arrest, and they administered CPR for 9 minutes.
Yeah.
And they were able to restore his heart to a regular beat. Last report that I saw, of course, unfair to speculate, is that they had put him to sleep. I think they need to cool his heart, from what I understand, that after a serious cardiovascular or heart issue, that you have a 24 to 72 hour period of regular beating. And another thing I saw is when your heart beats, I was hardly slept last night. I don't know why this shook me so much, but I think so many people are trying to figure out why. Puts into perspective that it's just a game and how important and fragile and precious life is. But this report showed that as your heart's beating, it's got patterns, and then there's irregularities in there, and about 60 times a minute, it comes to a reset. And so it would be very uncommon that you would take blunt trauma in that millisecond. And that is what potentially happened with Hamlin. And then the adrenaline allowed him to get up before the shock took over his body. Another concern was when you saw him hit the ground. You know, typically when a player is knocked backwards and they nail the ground, they can embrace for the land, right? You're gonna tighten up or stiffen up your neck, your back. But Hamlin was dead weight. I mean, he was out cold. So I fear when his head hit the turf with that dead weight, the impact there. Sad deal, and I will tell you, I now understand why Bob Costas left doing NFL. I've never felt so disgusted. And I'm not saying that they should have known what was going on with the communication to the field, but the fact that they were still, the announcement was made, you have 5 minutes to warm up, and it took the players and the coaches to say, no, we don't know if this kid's gonna live. I never have seen anything like that, and I know that the only hope at this point is prayer. And I know that there's so many people out there that are saying, oh, we're lifting up the Hamlin family. Well, if you can take time to tweet, please drop to your knees and lift him up, because already one miracle's taken place, and that was that he was out for 9 minutes. They administered CPR, and they brought him back. He's stabilized. Now, he is in critical condition as of the time we recorded this, Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. We'll continue to pray and keep you posted. But at this point, Chris, how does the NFL move forward? Why do they move forward? What's next for them?
You know, that's a big question right there. And, you know, they're trying to figure that out as we talk right now, what to do about it. NFL, remember, is big business. I mean, we're talking billions of dollars, you know, if they don't carry on with the season, if they don't finish off the regular season, go into the playoffs. Yeah, in my way of thinking, they are going to move on. They don't really have any choice. They've got to move on because this is their big business. We'll just see how they do it. Are they going to delay things a week, which they could do probably? Will they make up that game? You know, and again, all these things are secondary to this guy struggling for his life, but the NFL has got to figure out, you know, how to move on, what they do next, and how they do that without looking like barbarians, right? So,
yeah, it's going to be tough. And, you know, a lot of things you're seeing, everybody has already been tweeting and posting and offering their take. And I think it's important to note that you've seen some people upset with guys like Skip Bayless and, you know, some insensitive takes, but be careful in that anger you feel towards those individuals, because this is brand new. I don't know if there's truly a proper way to cover, to break, to respond, questions to ask, because, you know, fantasy football, as insignificant as that seems, billion-dollar industry, what do they do there? Chiefs, Bengals, Bills, all fighting for that 1 seed. This game's not unplayed. What do they do there? I mean, there are those questions, and it might be insensitive to ask them, but we've never been here.
Right.
And so how do you not ask those questions?
Well, and you've got a whole nother huge wild card in this situation. After going through COVID and the vaccination thing, Whether that had anything to do with this or not, which we don't know, but a lot of people are wondering about it. Rasmussen just did a poll, which I printed out this morning, that says nearly half of Americans think COVID-19 vaccines may be to blame for many unexplained deaths. Okay, that's just a poll they just did, and apparently underneath the surface, Americans are really talking about what's going on here, So it's fascinating that you've got that wild card that comes in on top of all this.
Yeah, and you see that was brought up so many times. I admittedly I couldn't stop refreshing my Twitter feed. I just wanted to see some kind of positive update. Know that DeMar was going to be okay or is going to be okay. But a lot of people brought that up and said, this has never happened. You've never seen anything like this before. If it's cardiovascular, he is a young guy. You know that he's got to be vaccinated because the NFL has demanded that, including his booster. And so you can't say that's the reason. But to not ask that question, Chris, when you talk about we've never had something like COVID-19, we've never had something like the COVID-19 vaccinations and the boosters, and so we now see whether you want to entertain it or you think that it's stupid or insensitive or you're pushing an agenda to ask the question, there is increased cardiovascular issues in men in their 20s, in their 30s, in their early 40s, and there's no arguing that. I think Fauci agrees with that. I think the CDC agrees with that. I mean, there is no arguing. So to not ask that question in this situation and to say that it's ignorant, you're pushing an agenda to ask that question is actually ignorant in itself because that is a realistic possibility and that question should be asked.
And we're not the only people bringing it up. I just saw a German representative in the EU saying we need to do an investigation into this because the deaths in Germany are like 19% above the normal death rate. What is going on here? So people are asking these questions, trying to figure out the answers, whatever they might be.
And I'll tell you this, I just continue to pray. I would hate to see a young man, and such a good young man, as a matter of fact, quick story. You're getting to see some of the great things about the 24-year-old DeMar Hamlin. Grew up in a small town in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he was one of the highest recruited, one of the number one recruits coming out of high school. Couldn't win anywhere in the country.
Yep.
Ohio State, Alabama, Michigan, they all want his services. He says, no, hey, I'm going to go play University of Pittsburgh. That's where you can go and do great things. And he reacclimated that program. And if you look at the coaches and the athletic director and what they're saying about when he came home to be with Pitt and what he did in his time there and where that program is now, and then you also look at the town he was raised in, high crime rate, lost 3 of his best friends who were shot when he was growing up. His dad was incarcerated for drug use. He vowed that wasn't going to be him, and he vowed he was going to make a difference in his hometown. Did a toy drive back in 2020, right before he got drafted. This is before he's drafted and dealing with NFL money, professional athlete money, wants to raise $2,500 for a toy drive back in his hometown. As of 10 a.m. this morning, that toy drive was up to $3.8 million with over 145,000 donations and pledges. It's not just Bills Mafia, it's not just NFL, it's not just the professional sports realm. It is all of America lifting up and being with them. And I cannot remember maybe the Kobe Bryant death, that something in the sports world has shown a level of solidarity, has shown a level of, last night, Chris, from 9 until 11, no one cared if you were liberal, if you were Republican, if you were black, if you were white, if you were gay, if you were trans, if you were whatever. It really didn't matter because everybody saw how precious life was and how insignificant a game and our differences and the things that we put all of our effort and all of our weight into. This young man living out his dream and doing it classily, and that happens. It's unbelievable. We ask you to continue to pray, and I just don't remember ever feeling like this over sports, and to be honest, first time in my life I'd say I really don't care if the NFL continues and that no life is worth a game, and I don't know how much I love the NFL or watching it. I just want this guy to pull through.
Yeah. The thing is I think we can say you can't blame the game for this. It wasn't the hit that did it. I mean, it was something going on with him. The way he, made the tackle, then he got up and then he fell down. So it wasn't the game. It wasn't the violence of football or the NFL. I think we know that for sure. it was something else. What that something else is, we don't know. So it definitely brings it to the surface of life and death. That's for sure.
No doubt about it. I'm going to let you take us into our first local story. After 16 years at sea, the new American Legion post commander in Sunrise Beach is happy to be home.
Absolutely. If you haven't been out to that American Legion post in Sunrise Beach, it is awesome. Big place, wonderful place there in Sunrise Beach. So Austin Teal is the new commander there. He traveled to more than 40 countries while he was in service. He took command of the post in August, and now he says his mission is to help encourage and connect veterans in the lake community to each other and to their community. And when you think about it, that's what the American Legion is all about. So Commander Teal retired as Senior Chief E8 in the Navy, served from 85 to 2008. He was at sea for 16 years. Can you imagine being at sea for 16 years? 5 of those in which he was deployed, served in active duty in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Kosovo, has been married to Jennifer for 30 years. What a wife, right? Your husband's out to sea, literally, for 30 years. And Jennifer is just a wonderful wife. So a lot of kudos to the American Legion and to Commander Austin Teal, young guy, relatively, trying to revitalize, rejuvenate the American Legion locally and really helping people out. And so the average age of the Legionnaires that go do special services at funerals, average age is 77. Okay, wow. And so Commander Teal is saying, hey, we need to get some young blood in here, some new people in here. So he says he urges veterans to join the Legion family. Any veterans honorably discharged after December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor Day, are good for this. So think about it. Great organization. And Mrs. Uncle Chris and I, we go to the Legion all the time.
You like their food there, right?
Yeah, they do a wing night there once a month. They do some great stuff. And we love, supporting the American Legion. So it's awesome. Good stuff. Great for the local Legion.
Yeah, that's a great post commander to have in Sunrise Beach. He's young, he's engaged. And so we tip our cap to Austin Teal. And I did want to note, he said, that of all the places that he went, they were all neat to visit, but there's not one that he'd want to live in. He goes, the thing that's missing in all of it is the freedom. Unless you travel extensively, you really cannot comprehend how wonderful the freedoms are that we enjoy here in the United States. Now, if you're interested in getting involved in the American Legion in Sunrise Beach, check out our friends at lakeexpo.com. They put together a great article, has lots of links, will take you to the website and allow you to plug in and meet or ask questions to Commander Austin Teal. So that's our first local story. Another good local story. You saw some of the crazy storms. We talked about it last week. A lot of power was lost. There was flooding going on. We'll tell you about that here in a minute. But there was actually a deer rescued over the weekend from the ice. You see that?
Yeah, boy, this was right up your alley. You animal lovers, they love these stories, deer out on the ice, going to go out and save him. This was one of those heartwarming stories. Apparently, the deer wanders out on some thin ice and falls in, can't get out. And so big rescue mission, they go out, they save this wonderful deer and let him go back out into the woods, I guess, right?
Yeah, and it was pretty cool. The Gravois Mills Fire Protection District and Missouri Department of Conservation, like you said, rescued the young buck. It was stuck on the ice and couldn't return to land without help from the firefighter. They nicknamed the deer Randy, and they call it a button buck. It was released back into the woods, as you said, uninjured. Someone had seen the deer and called because they didn't know what to do. I mean,
what do you do?
Are you going to go out there on the ice? I mean, I know you're not, but I mean, if somebody going to go out there on the ice, that's dangerous.
You might. I mean, you're such an animal lover, but animal lovers would. They might put themselves in danger. So you call the experts, and they actually went out, rescued them, and did that whole thing. That's very cool.
If it was one of my dogs, you bet your sweet butt.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, so also along those lines, the deer was rescued from the ice. Happy ending.
It was there. Rudolph, too, wasn't it? Was it Rudolph?
It was Randy. I don't know
Randy.
If you missed that.
Okay, yeah.
R the reindeer, though. That isn't our name. All right, so you also see that there were some flooding at some houses and condos.
Yeah.
And also a couple of local healthcare providers, Lake Regional Hospital, They had intermittent power issues. Luckily, they had generators. And NHC in Osage Beach, which is a senior living community and rehab facility, they actually lost power for 10 hours over the weekend. So scary stuff, but I don't think anything too crazy took place. But tell you what, through the flooding, you talk about scary, until something like that happens to you. I mean, you've never dealt with loss or destruction.
Yeah, and we know a couple of the people, involved in this. There's cleanup whenever you have a flood. So we know Kristen and Reed from A to Z Home Services, they clean up those things. They were busy all throughout Christmas. They had no Christmas because their whole teams were busy cleaning up all these flooded condos and stuff like that. So this happened just before Christmas, the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, I think. And when you lose power, you lose that heat, and then pipes start to freeze. Then you get the flooding. So it is nasty, dangerous, just horrible stuff to have to deal with. But the scary stuff you mentioned, like Lake Regional was having intermittent power. The good news that might be coming out of this is Ameren says that they're probably going to grow this system, right?
And get us a new substation because that's what it was a fail in what was feeding the substation.
Yeah.
And so they said they're going to look at increasing the substation and power grid here at Lake of the Ozarks.
Ameren told Lake Expo changes were in the works for a more robust power grid at the Lake of the Ozarks, including a new substation in the area. And again, that makes sense. We've been growing so much around here. You have to update the power grids and substations and all that stuff. It's heartbreaking though for the people that got flooded out and stuff like that. And we've got a friend, Dennis Weaver with Waterlock. I think his whole company is geared to try to save people in that situation, not to flood. Right. So you might look that up.
Correct. And I did want to mention, now the ledges over there off of, I think it's Nichols.
Yeah.
Those condos over there, that's where our Bob Spicer lives. And he was fortunate that his building was not affected, but right next to his was. And so it hits a little close to home sometimes when you see stuff like that happen. It's so scary. Maybe give Dennis a call and prevent that from happening.
Yeah, Waterlock is his company to try to save yourself from any of those floods.
Okay, so real quick, we only have a few more minutes before we have to wrap up, but I did want to mention, you see Lake Ozark, the deadline to file if you're going to run for one of the positions with the city of Lake Ozark. The deadline's come and passed. And did you see who threw their name back in the cap?
I did see somebody you're very familiar with over the years, right?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say personally very familiar with. I didn't have to get familiar until Jerry Morawski was a mayor and caused a lot of people to get interested after some of his let's say not great
shenanigans.
Yeah, we'll say not great behavior or shenanigans. But Johnny Francescos is going to give it another run. He was mayor for 12 years before losing to Jerry Morawski in 2019. He did muster another run against Morawski in 2021, the race I'm talking about. But following the Lake Expo expose and our coverage on Mayor Morawski at the time, Dennis Newberry entered the race as a write-in candidate, and he won that, as we know, by a landslide. In that election, Morawski somehow received 23% of the vote. Still shocked when I see that somehow he received 23% of the vote. Francesco's received 22%. That should tell you a lot right there. Johnny Francesco's received 1% less than Jerry Morawski after all that damning information and stories came out. So in 12 years as mayor, I don't think that Johnny Francesco's did anything inherently bad, I just think that it was stagnant, and I think it took us way too long to get out of some debt and be more proactive. Now, Newberry received 51% of the votes, and since being elected, I'd like to say the city of Lake Ozark is thriving. And if you look at you look at Ward 1, Judy Niels, Joe Gibbs, and Larry Denny. Ward 2, Krista Watts, and Ward 3, Matthew Wright, Carol Deneke Denny. And I know that Larry Denny and Carol Denny, they have reached out to me. They're adamantly opposed to the nightly rentals and saying that is very damning for Lake Ozark. So it will be interesting to see as you see Johnny Francesco's challenging Mayor Newberry. Do you think he's got a chance to win that?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, you never really know, but I think from what I've seen, read, and heard, seems to me Dennis Newberry's done a great job since taking over. So I'm guessing he is going to be a heavy favorite. You never know. I mean, that's why they run.
And now time for our weekly Central Ozarks Medical Center hometown hero. And Chris, this one nominated by you. Really good one. You want to do the honors?
Sure. She is a very good friend of ours, Sandy Waggett, right? She has put together a company here at the Lake of the Ozarks, which is one of those foundational companies. Most of the big businesses around here use Sandy. She's a integral part of their business to help them get business. But even more than that, she's an incredible lady, has a huge heart. So she's gotten certified as a coach, kind of as a therapist. She's just written a book, all with the intent of helping people through hard times and to thrive during difficult times. So it is Sandy Waggett, MSW Designs, who is our COMC Hometown Hero of the Week.
Yeah, she's pretty phenomenal. Started her business back in 1999, 13 employees there. And prior to starting MSW, she was a senior engineer for BAE Systems Lockheed Martin, developing computer and web-based training applications. Crazy, right? You must be very smart.
Top secret stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was for the USAF and Space Command. She's also Lake Area Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors the last 9 years, Board of Advisors for Big Brothers Big Sisters, President of the Board of Directors for CADV. She's won so many awards, from Distinguished Citizen of the Year a couple of years ago to Most Small Business of the Year from the Chamber to Most Influential Individual in the Lake Area. But recently, as you said, she's got her new podcast, Happy on Purpose, all about living intentionally, taking risks, stepping outside your comfort zone, with author TJ Sweet at happyonpurpose.com. Also, as you said, setting goals, life coaching, staying fit and active. And I've noticed over the last few years, you've seen Sandy really hit it outdoors, from kayaking to hiking to running to Tough Mudders. I mean, she's an inspiration. She does not stop. And what's funny, she grew up in Las Vegas, but she spent time here every summer, 5 weeks, visiting her dad. She did her undergrad in Colorado, but knew the lake was going to be it. And so once she settled down here in 99 and has grown this business, like you said, MSW services thousands of businesses, not just across Missouri, but across the Midwest. And so she's taken that to another level, now offers that. And like you said, Chris, she is such an inspiration to people. When we were awarded the Small Business of the Year a couple years ago, Sandy was the one that read our nomination and welcomed us up. And she was basically crying because that's how she is. She loves seeing others awarded and recognized, and she truly is one of the best.
And her new book out is called Bold Moves, really great stuff. And she went to junior high school with Jimmy Kimmel.
I saw that.
Isn't that cool? Yeah.
Right.
How about that?
And now she gets to work with you or be an eye with you and stuff. So it's like, yeah, that's a win-win, right? But seriously, there's no one around the lake that knows Sandy that doesn't love and adore her. We talked to Lisa Larson and many others. Lisa says, from the moment I've met her, she's been a huge inspiration in my life. She's been there for me when she didn't even realize it. And she goes, I am so much better of a person because Sandy Waggett came into my life. And as you see at a recent book signing just a couple weeks ago, Bold Moves, you see all the different people who came to get a book, to have it signed. And we're planning on, I know you're planning on having Sandy in the near future, talk about the book, continue to get updated. But you can go check out happyonpurpose.com, check out MSW, or just go connect with Sandy Waggett. She sends these daily mindset reminders I love to get every morning, really gets you your day started off on the right foot. And so if you don't know this week's Central Ozarks Medical Center's hometown hero, Sandy Waggett, you need to get on that. Now, Chris, a little bit more of a somber mood today. Can't remember the last time we've had a show quite like this. Lots of good stuff happening on Lake TV with the new year. Not only our community spotlight show, you've got some great guests lined up. And this week, Bill Mulder for Lake Area history. And of course, high school basketball starts again in a couple days.
So on Tuesday the 10th, it's Camdenton home to Rolla. On Thursday, January 12th, Eldon home to Tipton. High school basketball right here on Lake TV.
And last but not least, this Saturday, Eagle Days, Lake of the Ozarks 2023.
Caw, caw.
That's going to do it for this week's Cup of Coffee. We'll see you guys next week.